Matt Armstrong built something most people said was impossible. A wrecked Bugatti Veyron, written off, stripped, and sold for parts, slowly came back to life in a small UK garage. The internet watched every bolt, every panel, every late night. 96 million views later, the project felt like a triumph. But the final 10% didn't just finish a car. It cracked open a story that nobody in the rebuild community saw coming. The Bugatti Veyron was never supposed to be a project car. When it left the Molsheim factory floor, it carried a price tag of £1.2 million. It was one of the most technically complex road cars ever built. A W16 engine, 4 turbochargers, and a drivetrain so intricate that even Bugatti's own dealerships required proprietary software just to run a basic diagnostic. It wasn't a car you rebuilt in a rented unit. It wasn't even a car most specialist workshops would touch. But in late 2022, one of these cars was sitting in a UK salvage yard, waterlogged and silent. Sustained flood damage had reached deep into the engine bay and the electronics. Insurers had seen enough. They declared it a total loss. According to UK salvage records, the car passed through at least 2 separate auction houses before anyone took it seriously. Professional restorers looked at the numbers and walked away. The cost of returning a Veyron to road-legal condition, even under ideal circumstances, was widely estimated by specialist mechanics to exceed whatever the finished car would actually sell for. Matt Armstrong paid approximately £40,000 for it. At that price, a £1.2 million supercar had become cheaper than most second-hand family estates. Armstrong, at that point, had fewer than 500,000 YouTube subscribers. He was not yet a household name in the automotive content world. He had no manufacturer backing, no authorized Bugatti technician publicly willing to assist, and no institutional support of any kind. Every credible voice around him pointed in the same direction. Leave it. He bought it anyway. The early videos showed the teardown, the damage assessment, the first cautious optimism. What they didn't show, and what the audience had no reason to question yet, was the full picture of what it would actually take to bring this car back. A flood-damaged Bugatti for £40,000, with no manufacturer support and no guarantee it would ever run again. What would you have done, bought it, or walked away? Drop your answer below. What followed would attract nearly 100 million views. But the story behind those views was already more complicated than the thumbnails suggested. Over 14 months, Armstrong uploaded more than 30 videos documenting the Veyron's restoration. No dramatic production setup. No co-host. Just a camera, a car in pieces, and a creator working through one of the most technically demanding rebuilds ever attempted on the platform. The format was simple. The results were not. The series accumulated over 96 million combined views across the playlist. One episode alone crossed 18 million views, a number that places it among the most watched individual moments in automotive YouTube history. For context, most dedicated car restoration channels consider a single video reaching 1 million views a significant milestone. Armstrong's series wasn't doing that occasionally. It was doing it repeatedly, across dozens of uploads, over more than a year. The comment sections told their own story. Engineers debated the feasibility of the W16 repair in technical detail. Lifelong petrolheads tracked every parts update. And then there were the viewers who had never watched a car video before in their lives. People drawn in not by the Bugatti badge, but by the human stakes of watching someone attempt something genuinely difficult and refuse to quit. That cross-section of audience is rare. It doesn't happen by accident, and it doesn't happen with a car that isn't compelling on its own terms. The channel grew fast. Sponsorship integrations appeared, 2 major automotive parts suppliers among them. Merchandise moved. Industry analysts estimated that combined revenue from ad income, brand deals, and merchandise sales during the series ran into several £100,000. A live event tied to the build sold tickets. The project had become, by any commercial measure, a successful media property. None of that was hidden. Creators monetize their work. That's understood. But the financial structure forming around this particular project was more layered than a standard content deal. The Bugatti wasn't just the subject of the series. It was the asset at the center of a commercial operation, one where the audience's emotional investment was, functionally, part of the business model. The viewers believed they were watching a passion project, A grassroots underdog story. One person against an impossible machine. That belief was the engine behind 96 million views. And it was about to get complicated. Every restoration hits a wall. With most project cars, that wall is financial, or mechanical, or both. With a Bugatti Veyron, the wall is something different entirely. It's legal. The Veyron's dual-clutch transmission and all-wheel drive coupling system cannot be calibrated with commercial diagnostic tools. The software required to perform that work sits exclusively within Bugatti's authorized service network. It cannot be purchased independently. It cannot be replicated by third-party equipment. Outside of that network, the hardware simply will not communicate. For Armstrong, reaching the transmission and drivetrain calibration stage in mid-2023 meant confronting a barrier that no amount of mechanical skill or determination could overcome alone. What happened next did not appear in any video. According to a community post later deleted from Armstrong's own channel, a specialist workshop in mainland Europe performed at least 2 separate interventions on the car. The facility was never named on screen. The visits were never filmed. The audience, at that point still watching consistent uploads from what appeared to be a UK garage operation, had no visibility into either trip. One automotive journalist covering the build estimated that transmission and AWD calibration on a Veyron, performed by a qualified specialist facility, typically costs between £15,000 and £30,000. That figure covers calibration alone, before logistics, transportation, or any additional diagnostic work is factored in. Armstrong never disclosed what the interventions cost. The community post that confirmed they happened was removed without explanation. This is where the story stops being just about a car. If you want to understand how the rebuild world actually works behind the camera, and what most creators will never tell you, subscribe. There's more coming that changes how you'll watch these videos forever. The deleted post and the unnamed European workshop didn't prove dishonesty, but they marked a clear shift. The one-man garage framing that had driven 96 million views was no longer the complete picture, and Armstrong's own words, however briefly visible, had confirmed it. That shift didn't stay contained to the mid-build phase. It pointed forward, directly toward the decisions made in the final 10% of the project. And those decisions would change how the entire story was read. The final 10% of any build carries a specific kind of weight. It's the stage where everything either comes together or falls apart. For Armstrong, it came together, but not in the way the audience had been led to picture it. The last phase of the Veyron restoration, final paint correction to Bugatti factory specification, full interior restoration using manufacturer-grade materials, and comprehensive drivetrain commissioning, was completed at a professional facility. Not the garage that had appeared in every thumbnail. Not the space the audience had spent 14 months watching. A professional workshop, off-camera, handled the work that would define the finished car. In 2024, Automotive Investigator account at Garage Watch published a post referencing what it described as leaked workshop invoices connected to this final stage. According to that post, the costs for the concluding phase of the build fell between £60,000 and £85,000. Added to the £40,000 purchase price, the European specialist interventions, part sourcing across more than 30 video episodes, and ongoing workshop costs throughout the project, the total spend was estimated at potentially exceeding £180,000. Against a projected resale value of between £250,000 and £300,000 once the car was fully roadworthy and documented, the margin looked clean. The project, on paper, made financial sense. Buy low, spend carefully, sell high. A viable model. But the content revenue reframed that calculation entirely. YouTube ad income across 96 million combined views represents a substantial figure on its own. Ad brand deal income from 2 major automotive parts suppliers, both integrated across multiple episodes, plus ticket sales from a live event tied directly to the build's momentum, and industry observers estimated that the series had generated income comfortably exceeding the total restoration cost before the car was even finished. The Bugatti hadn't just been rebuilt. It had been monetized, repeatedly and successfully, while the audience watched what they understood to be a passion project running on one creator's resources and determination. That reframing hit the community hard. Not because professional help was involved. By Chapter 3, informed viewers had already processed that. What landed differently was the financial picture in full. The audience had been the engine of a commercial operation generating returns before the car turned a wheel. Their attention, their shares, their comments, all of it had contributed to a revenue stream that made the project profitable independent of the car's resale value. Armstrong has not addressed this directly on camera. No cost breakdown has been published. No accounting of the professional facility work has been offered. The completion video celebrated the car. The numbers behind it remained unspoken. And that gap, between what was shown and what was real, became the fault line that split the rebuild community into two camps it has not yet closed. The completion video landed in early 2024. The Bugatti ran. The comments celebrated. For a significant portion of the audience, it was exactly what 14 months of investment had been building toward, a genuine landmark moment in automotive content. The achievement was real, and the people who recognized it said so loudly. But within 72 hours, a second conversation had begun. This wasn't a general audience reacting emotionally. It was a technically literate community that approached the build's finances and framing with the same scrutiny they'd apply to a dodgy repair job. Threads dissecting the project's cost structure, the off-camera European interventions, and the gap between the on-screen narrative and the reported reality accumulated thousands of comments. Several Discord servers dedicated to automotive content, with a combined membership exceeding 40,000 enthusiasts, hosted parallel debates that ran for days. The central question was specific and uncomfortable. If a restoration is commercially funded through content revenue before it begins, executed in part by undisclosed professional facilities, and structured as a profitable media property throughout, does it still qualify as a rebuild in the spirit the audience understood it to be? A community post calling for a full financial breakdown gathered over 6,000 upvotes in a single week. That number matters. It wasn't a fringe reaction. It represented a measurable portion of an engaged, informed audience demanding an answer to a direct question. Armstrong responded. Briefly. A short community post acknowledged that the debate existed. It offered no cost breakdown, no itemized account of professional interventions, no explanation of the facility work in the final stage. The response was careful and measured, and to the people asking the question, it was not enough. That silence became the most discussed element of the entire project. Not the W16 firing. Not the paint. The silence. Maybe you've backed someone publicly, a creator, a friend, a project, and later felt like the full picture was never shown to you. That gap between what we're told and what's real is exactly what this debate is about. Armstrong's project was the loudest example. It was not the only one. A 2023 report by automotive media outlet Motor1 identified at least 7 major YouTube restoration channels where off-camera professional assistance had been confirmed after the fact, assistance that was never disclosed in the original content. The combined subscriber count of those 7 channels exceeded 22 million. The Armstrong situation wasn't an anomaly. It was a visible crack in a wall that had been under pressure for years. What the Bugatti series did, intentionally or not, was make that pressure impossible to ignore. The scale of the viewership, the commercial success of the project, and the public nature of the fallout created a moment the broader rebuild community couldn't quietly absorb and move past. The questions it raised didn't stay attached to one creator. They spread. Several smaller creators responded by adopting voluntary transparency policies. Build costs itemized in video descriptions. Professional interventions listed by name and function. Invoices, where possible, shared openly. The gesture was informal and unenforceable. No platform standard exists, no governing body oversees it, but the intent was clear. A portion of the community had decided that the audience deserved the full picture, and they were going to provide it regardless of whether anyone required them to. The larger channels have largely stayed quiet on the question. The financial incentive to maintain a compelling narrative is significant, and full disclosure complicates that narrative in ways that are difficult to manage once an audience has formed around a particular story. Matt Armstrong's Bugatti Veyron is now reportedly valued at over £280,000. It runs. It drives. The mechanical achievement is not in dispute. But the conversation it forced open has no clean resolution, and the rebuild community is still working out what honesty in this space is supposed to look like. The Bugatti is finished. The debate isn't. And Matt Armstrong isn't the only creator sitting on a story like this. The next video goes inside a rebuild that collapsed entirely, and the paper trail that explains exactly why.